Hi everyone, welcome back to the Ben and Danny show. We hope you enjoyed the last session where we talked about all the fundamental areas of Unity, kind of the hierarchy, the inspector, and the project window. And then you learn vital keywords such as the game object and the component. So within this second session, we're going to be learning about, what are we going to be learning about, Ben?
So as Danny says, last time we looked at the fundamentals of Unity, so things like game objects, transforms, and we looked at the Unity editor, right? We looked at that kind of stuff. To follow on from that, we've used Unity, but we haven't really used Unity to actually start making a game. So today, hopefully, we're going to. Well, fingers crossed, nothing breaks, right? So we're going to download some assets. We're going to import them into our project. So we'll show you how to actually import files into your project, which is quite an important thing when making a game. We're going to have a little bit of a look at sprite modifications, so how sprites are stored. We're going to look at things like texture atlases, and we're also going to look at something called the pixel perfect camera, because we're making a kind of 8-bit style retro game, as you saw in the previous stream. It has that kind of retro look. So in order to recreate that kind of retro look, we're going to use something called the pixel perfect camera, but we're going to show you all about that, really. Yeah. So I tell you what, I will switch to my screen now, and we'll get started on some Unity. So I'm just going to open up Unity Hub just like we did before. So just type in Unity Hub, obviously, and then it will pop up, and we can begin. So last time I showed you how to create a project and how to look at your projects and stuff like that. So we're going to make a 2D project this time. So do you remember last time we talked about 3D and 2D projects, and I conveniently said, "Oh, don't worry about 2D projects."
Well, now you need to worry about them.
Yeah, start worrying. Start worrying about them right now.
Panic.
Yeah.
No, not really.
So we're going to make a 2D project, and let's do that. So it's fairly straightforward. It's just the new button, as I showed you last time. So we'll just press that, and I'll go on to this version, which is Unity 2020. So let's click on this. And as you can see, we've got a bunch of templates. We've got 3D, but what we're going to do is we're going to click 2D. So this is going to be the project that we're going to work on. And I guess, I don't know what the name should be. Maybe we'll call it, I don't want to call it platformer game again. We'll call it, I don't know, a 2D game. It's not a great name. As you can tell, I'm not very good.
Okay, I feel like by the end of this series, we're going to have to find a name for this game.
Yeah.
We can't just keep calling it like a 2D game, a platformer game.
Yeah, exactly right. So what I'll do is I'll click create, and then Unity will do its thing. Yes, Alex.
Thanks,
Alex.
very
creative name indeed. Yeah, very creative name. I'm terrible with names. Terrible with them.
I am awful too.
Yeah. So just quickly while this loads up, the first thing you might think is, okay, well, this is going to sound like a bit of a silly comment, but you might think, what's the difference between a 2D and a 3D project in Unity? Well, just, aside from the obvious of one being 2D and the other being 3D, Unity is set up slightly different for a 2D project as opposed to a 3D project. So 2D projects are actually, in some regards, you can kind of think of it as 3D. This is probably a bit confusing, so I might not go down that avenue. But essentially, 2D games have a certain depth. It's just more about how they're projected to the camera. It'll make a lot more sense when Unity finally decides to load in after 50 years.
I mean, there are different kinds of projects as well. There's the full 2D games where it's like that flat graphics, that's side scrollers, which is kind of what we're doing, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And then, but then there's the 2D gameplay with like 3D graphics. So the environment is 3D, but then you're still having that one where you can only move left or right or up or down.
Mm.
And then there's also you have like the same 2D gameplay, but the graphics have kind of a perspective. They're in like different distances, that's the word, to create that kind of depth to the scene.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of like examples, but it's just gone over my head.
so that kind of effect where objects in the back of the scene, objects which are further away in 2D, move slower to ones in the foreground. That's called parallax scrolling, and that's as Danny says, a 2D game doesn't just have to be a 2D game. There's actually, you can have things like depth in there, but usually when we talk about 2D games, we just mean that we don't have 3D objects in there. We usually just work with sprites instead. So here is the Unity header, as we saw before. It is slightly different. So as you can see this, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse. So as you can see, there's a little switch here that says, when toggled on, the scene is in 2D view. So when you press this, it'll switch from 2D view to 3D view. So here's 3D, as you can see. But if I click 2D, we can start moving around in a two-dimensional fashion. So essentially, we want to make sure that thing is toggled on. And that's really one of the biggest differences between 2D projects and 3D projects in Unity is this little switch, is that you do everything in a 2D plane. And there's other settings as well. So for example, I mean, this won't really mean much, but if I click on the camera, you can see in the inspector that the projection is orthographic, right? Now, orthographic and perspective are two different ways of rendering. And orthographics, I always think orthographics a really fancy word for something that's quite straightforward, really.
Yeah.
So perspective projection is the kind of projection we experience in the real world. So if you have I don't know, let's say a tennis ball, right, and you take this tennis ball I don't know, 100 meters away, and you place it somewhere, that tennis ball is going to look really small when you're stood quite far away. If you get up quite close to the tennis ball, it's going to look quite big, and that's what perspective is. Small objects look large when they're close up, and large objects look small when they're further away. Now, what's an orthographic projection? Well, basically, it's not that.
It's not that.
That's all it is. So perspective is what we experience in the real world. Orthographic is there's no difference. Like the tennis ball would look the same size regardless of if it's far away or if it's close. I can probably demonstrate this to you actually. So let's. I don't know if this is a. Yeah. Okay. We'll do this very quickly. Let's get a cube, right?
Oh no, not a cube.
Not a cube. I mean, it's a bit dark. I think it's because there's no directional light in here, because we've set it up for a 2D project instead of a 3D one. And then if I get the camera, you can see. Well, okay, I'll make a cube, and I'll put this one all the way back here, maybe. Or where's the camera pointing? Camera's pointing that way. So we'll put this cube quite far away, like this. And then if we look at the camera, as you can see, I'm not sure if you can see that, but these are exactly the same size. But if I switch this to perspective, that's what you'd expect in the real world. You'd expect this cube behind to be smaller, whereas orthographic, they're exactly the same size. So that's one of the biggest differences between 2D and 3D games, is the fact that in 2D we don't have that, and it makes sense because of the type of game we're making. So I've talked quite a lot there about orthographic projections. But
I think it is an important thing to understand. Well, it's an important concept to understand and get your head around the differences.
Yeah, and perspective and orthographic, sometimes you use perspective projection in 2D games for certain effects. But usually when you just want to make a 2D game, whether it's, a kind of retro style game like the one we're making, or something that's, a bit more modern, usually we want to just use orthographic projection instead of perspective. So what I will talk about now is the different. So last time we talked about how to move around the environment in a 3D setting, right? So do you remember if I toggle this off, you can move the camera around, you can fly left, fly right, you can fly around and look at stuff. So how do you do that in 2D? Well, in 2D, it's really easy. You don't have to worry about all that. You can press and hold the middle mouse button, and it brings up this little hand tool, and then you can drag around the scene like this. So you can, you can move this way, you can move that way. So you can have something in your scene, and you can zoom in just like you would normally, and yeah, you can move around. And as I said before, the this tool up here, the rect tool, the rectangle tool, that will come in a bit more useful to us when we start working with sprites. Now, I don't think we're going to touch actual sprite objects this time, but I think in the next one we will. So this tool here will become more important in the future, but I just wanted to make a note of that.
I mean, it's good. You by kind of showing each different tool, they can predict what we're going to be using.
Yeah,
I understand where they come from and what we're going to use it for.
Yeah, I mean, for a while, I didn't really work that much with 2D games, and I always thought, what is that tool? What does it do? And then I made a 2D game, and I was like, oh right, okay, it's really useful.
What it does.
Yeah, it's a really useful tool. But you can create all kinds of stuff. So I can create just to show you, I can create a circle, and now we have a circle in our game. It's not much. It's not much to look at. It's not a very good game. But you could do something with this, and this is what the rect tool is, right? Is it draws a little rectangle for us, and we can move this around. So we can, make this, I don't know, I don't know the technical term, but well, it's an ellipse now, isn't it? Yeah. So we can make an ellipse shape. We can make something like that. If we want to scale it in proportion, we can hold Shift, and it will scale it in proportion like this.
I've just seen Chris's comment, the long cube tool. I'm never going to live that down. That's just going to go with me for the rest of my life. Long cube.
The long cube tool. the long circle, yeah.
Gosh.
But this rect tool, this is how we move things around in a 2D game. Is we use the middle mouse button to move around our level. We can zoom in and out, and we can click the left mouse button inside and hold it, and we can move things freely around in the environment. So I could have a circle here. Maybe I'll have a bigger one here. I'll have maybe, as Chris says, a long circle like this, an ellipse. But here's the idea: is that these don't have to be circles. They could be characters. They could be, I don't know, some coins or something. We could we're just moving sprites around in the environment, so we can just click and drag and move these around, and we can move these things around the corner to actually do. If you want to rotate, you can use the rotate tool up here and do the same thing. I think there's actually, yeah, it's
a bit hard to show on a circle.
Yeah, it's a bit hard, but let's use the long circle, right?
Long circle, okay.
So if you just come to the just outside of the box, you'll see the mouse changes to this kind of rotate thing, and what this allows you to do is rotate. So you can rotate it quite easily. You can move this around. You can do whatever. But what I'm trying to get at here is that this tool here is pretty much everything you need to move stuff around in 2D. You can scale quite easily. You can move it around by clicking and dragging. You can rotate just by going outside the box and rotating. So you can change all of these.
It's a very free form way of kind of changing how the sprite looks, but you can also do it within the inspector, within the transform, do it in a more mathematical way, a more precise way if you want to.
Yeah, so if we had a square, for example, I could rotate it like this, but as Danny said, if you look here on the right, just in this box here, just keep a look of that number, and as I move it round, you can see the rotation is is moving round, right? So you can actually move it this way, where you're actually moving the values up and down. So yeah,
It's just another way of doing it, and
yeah, some
depends
people
on how precise you want to be.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes that's quite useful because maybe you have, I don't. We'll use a capsule this time. Sometimes you want the rotation to be exactly 90 degrees. So you can. I think you can hold shift. Yeah, you can hold shift to go in increments of what's that, like 15. So you can get it precisely, but let's say you wanted to have it perfectly level, and say you're there and you're like, oh, I don't know what that is. You can go up here and just set the degrees to 90, or you can set it to 180. And interesting as well, not much people know this, but these boxes actually accept calculations. So you can do 90 divided by 2 and it will set it to 45, or you can do 90, 45 times by 0.2.
Mine has been blown. I did not know you could do that.
It's really cool. Like if you like want to use this kind of style of moving stuff around, that's also fun as well. And we've spent quite a long time there talking about this tool, but it is quite important to know, because as we go through this series, we're going to be moving stuff around quite a lot. So in order for you to understand how I'm actually moving stuff around, this is the tool we're using. So the next thing I probably want to talk about is just a quick note before we actually get into actually putting stuff into the project. We mentioned this idea of scenes last time, and we said that a scene is like a level, right? So if you want to save a particular scene, so you can have multiple scenes in your game, and that makes sense. Games typically aren't just one level, they have many levels. So how do you actually save scenes so you can have maybe 5 levels in your game? Well, you come up here to File, and you can do Save As here, and you can save the scene. So let's go into the scene folder, and we can call this something like main level, and now our scene is called main level. We can go into our scenes folder, and there's 2 levels here. So I'm going to get rid of this sample scene one, and this is the scene that we're working in. And as you can see, it's changed the name of the level to main level. So that's how you save scenes. You can also open up a scene by doing open scene, so you can edit a particular level. So we've only got 1 level here, so it's pretty useless. But if we had if we had 5 levels, we could click on one of these levels and start editing that particular level.
I mean, you could also open it up in the project window as well.
Yeah.
Just click on the level you want to select. But as we only have 1 level, you just click on that.
yeah. So it'd make more sense if we had more levels, but for now, I just wanted to make a note that you can do that. There is also up here, there's save, which saves the changes to the scene. Don't get caught editing your level and then you go, oh, everything's fine, and you close Unity down by accident, and then you lose
the horror.
Horror. You lose the whole day's work. And believe me, that's happened to me many times. So just make sure to go File, Save. I just do it as instinct now, so you can do Control S as well to save it, but that'll just save the changes in your scene. So if you add a new object and you've made a bit of your level and you're quite happy with the way it is, just save the scene, so you know that you're not going to lose it. The other thing to do as well is save project. So save project is similar to save scene, but it saves changes across the whole project. So save will just save changes in this level, right? But if I click save project, it's going to save all the changes in the entire project. So basically just do both. Save that and then save the project, and you'll be fine. So yeah, so I just wanted to note that. And okay, so actually we've talked quite a lot about the 2D editor and stuff and how we can move stuff around. Beth just said, I too have many trust issues with Unity. Yes. Yeah.
I think we all do by now.
Yeah.
Chris just put a save per change keeps the sadness away. That is very true.
It's very true. Good advice from Chris, to be fair. So yeah, let's actually get into putting assets in our game. So as we said before, we're going to actually put stuff in the project. So we're going to actually get some assets and put them in this project, and then put them in the level. So we're going to use this project window quite a lot. And one question which might be on your mind is, well, what's the best kind of folder structure? You know, we've got this folder here called scenes. I think there's no real good answer to this. You know, people work in different ways. The one I like to use, it's just down to preference, is I keep everything at the top level with subfolders for different kinds of assets. So I'll click here, right click here, and I go create, and I can create a new folder. So I'd put something like scripts in here. You know, I could create another folder, and I could, you know, call this Sprites or something. And now you have quite a nice folder structure that you could use, for example.
Just basically put things into folders where you feel like it is organized for you. But if you're like working in a team, it's good to have kind of that organizational structure so that everyone knows what things are. So having like the scripts in the script folder and the sprites in a sprite folder, or environment background sprites in one folder. It depends on where you want to put everything, but just make sure it's organized so that you know where everything is, and it's not just one big mess of assets and scripts and sounds. And it just makes sense. It's like a common organizational skills.
Yeah, I think organization, especially in games development, is quite tedious at the start. You think, oh right, I've got to have all these folders and stuff. But I'll tell you for a fact, when the project starts getting large, you think, oh, thank God I've committed myself to to organize.
And it's when you're working in a team as well. As I said, it's just easier to find certain things within the project if they're in they're in their respective folders.
And so yeah, basically just organization is a good thing. As for the actual folder structure itself, the one we're going to use is this kind of style, but is that Adobe Reader again? Oh, go away.
No, it's Chris just put in the chat.
A la Lincoln Island. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So
I shouldn't be laughing.
So yeah, we're going to use this kind of folder structure. So that's what we're going to use. Now, before we actually start importing assets, I just want to make a note that, as I said earlier, we're going to make an 8-bit style kind of retro game. So what we want intentionally pixelated graphics. And just before we do that, I just want to make a note that by default, Unity wants to render 2D sprites smoothly, you know, because it's a modern game engine, and it's not really set up initially for games that work, games that are kind of have that kind of retro aesthetic. So we are going to go through some steps today to actually show you how to get that kind of aesthetic, and it largely comes down to the way we import textures and also how we set up the camera to kind of just ignore all the smoothing. You know, we're saying, oh, all that technology that you're built for, no, just ignore that.
Yeah, we don't want it.
I want something. I want something that's really pixelated, please. You know, so we're going to go through that. But yeah, let's actually get on to importing assets. So there's two main ways you can actually do this. So you can the first is to drag and drop actual files into your project, which is as easy as it sounds. You know, you just drag and drop assets into your project. The other way, and the way that we're going to get onto, is to actually download something called a Unity package. Now, a Unity package is a single file that you can download, or someone can give you via email or something like that. You click that, you open it up, and Unity will automatically extract all the files inside of it into your project in a specific way. And you might think, okay, well, what's the difference between these two? What's the difference between, why would you ever use a Unity package? Well, a Unity package is really useful because you can give it a folder structure, and that's why for our game we're going to give you a link to go download some assets, so you have the same file structure as us, so there's no confusion between the two. But we'll get into that. I'll show you the first way before we actually start. So I will show you how to place some assets inside the project, and I'll do this very quickly with I guess we'll make a 3D model, right? So I'll make a folder, I'll call it models, right? And I know we're making a 2D game and I'm going off topic here, but it's just very easy to show you a 3D object. So I'll very quickly open Blender. This series is all about Unity, and now I'm opening Blender. So
I mean, there are other tools that are used to create a game, so it's good to understand what other tools you can use within the game. Wow, I just muddled that what I was trying to say. Basically, there's a lot of things that make up a game, and by learning a little bit about how to make your own asset or how to move your own assets in is probably a good idea to kind of keep reference of where you could go to do that. Yeah, so I have made a little, I don't know, it's like a little, it looks like a popcorn kernel, to be fair. Looks like, oh my god, I want popcorn.
So that we've made a little popcorn kernel, right? So I'll just save this to C drive Blender. I didn't realize I've got things in here. So popcorn, let's whack that in. Now, importing an asset. So ignore all this. I mean, I've just made an object, so just ignore that part. But if I open up my my things, I go to C drive Blender. So I'm opening up my 3D models thing. So I've got a bunch of models in here. If I want to put one of these 3D models into my project, it's very easy. I just click and drag. So where is it? Popcorn. So if I click and drag and put it in here, and then if I go to Unity, now we have this 3D model, right? So now this 3D model is in our game, and we can use it freely in our game. So the next thing is, how do you actually get this into your scene? Well, it's quite easy. You just click and drag again. You just click and drag this. And you can't really see it because there's no light, but we now have some popcorn in our game, right? And you can do this with like loads of things. So you can highlight. I've got some here, and I don't know what they're like. I mean, I've got sword, tile, table, and stuff. If I just drag all of these into the project, Unity takes a while. As you can see, it's importing them. So it's importing these little models for us, and once it's done, I'll just show you how to put these in as well. But it's essentially the same process. This is one of the easiest things about it, is you can just click and drag.
It's a drag and drop kind of scenario.
Yeah. So here's a barrel that I made. I don't know when. For some reason, this has
a camera attached.
Yeah. And so does this one. So we have some 3D models in our scene, but it's that easy. We just click and drag it into our project, and we just click and drag from our project into the scene view. So it's fairly easy. I'm just going to delete these, but that's how you'd normally do it. Is you would just import assets like that.
It's the same for 2D as well. You can just drag in a picture, and it will just make it into a sprite within Unity that allows you to just put it into the scene.
Yeah, exactly. So you can usually do this with 3D models. If you have a texture and it's marked as a sprite, you can drag that into the scene as well, and there you go. And we're going to be doing that probably next time, but I'll show you some of the import settings and stuff. So I just wanted to show you that. The second way is to use a Unity package, and I've been talking about this Unity package for a good reason. It's because our what's it called? The
asset
sprites.
Pack?
Yeah, exactly. Our asset pack is going to we're going to use a Unity package for that. So we're going to give you a link, and then hopefully you go off, download it, and then put it into your game. So I'm quickly going to show you the asset pack we're going to use. So I don't take any credit for any of the sprites we used here. It's actually called Kings and Pigs on itch.io. Now, if you don't know about itch.io, itch.io is a really good site. If you're looking for, free game assets that you can just quickly drag into your project and get started building a game, itch.io is a great site. So
there are so many out there.
Yeah, so there's Kings and Pigs pack is made by a user called Pixel Frog, and I don't know, I just love the sprites. They're amazing. So this probably looks familiar to what we showed you last time, for a good reason. These are the sprites we're going to use. So you could download this, and this is the sprite pack that we're going to use. But the easiest way to do it is we've already put it in a package for you. So I think that's in the chat now. So it's lincoln.ac/Unity game. And this will take you to platformassets.unity package. Just ignore all this stuff. That doesn't mean anything. If you just click up here on the top right, download, it should download it for you. So as you can see, I've got this Unity package. And all I have to do to actually get it into our project. So we don't need this models thing anymore. So I'm just going to delete that folder, just so we're not confused. And let's go back here. If I just click on this, or I click and drag it into our project, Unity will do the rest. So I've just clicked on this, and Unity will pop up with everything that's in here. So it's saying, oh, okay, you want me to create a sprites folder, and then inside that sprites folder is called Kings and Pigs pack, and then inside of this is all these different kinds of images, and all you do is just click import. And that's the real good thing about Unity packages is you don't have to worry about, oh, okay, I need to drag this folder into this one and drag this one into that one. You can just click a button and it does it all for you. So when you click that, you should have exactly the same folder structure as us. So you should have a folder called Sprites, and then inside that you should have the Kings and Pigs pack. So you can double click to navigate through these. So I'm just double clicking. And there's a whole bunch of different stuff here. So we have all kinds of things. So we can actually have a look at these. So there's like a character here that we could use. There's like a pig character here we could use.
It's such a cute pack. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, the guy who made it, Pixel Frog on itch.io, credit to him, because I mean, it's such an amazing little pack. But yeah, so that's it really. You just download it from that link, click it, it should import it all for you. What we are going to do today, we're not going to touch these sprites much, but we are going to look at the tile sets, because I did promise last time that we'd start building a level, and we will get onto that eventually. But I just want to, so there's a folder here conveniently called tile sets, and if we go into that, you can see we have this image, right, which is called terrain 32 by 32. So if I double click this, it's just opened up in my thing, but you can see it's just an image with this, and you might think, well, that's useless. Why is it in one image, and what's the point of that? Well, basically, sometimes we use something called a texture atlas. So what a texture atlas is it's just one image that has all the different sprites inside of it, and we need to cut out the sprites for certain things. So you might see things like sprite sheets where there's just one image containing all the sprites, and you have to cut out each individual shape inside of that thing. It'll make more sense once we get into the Sprite Editor, but I'll show you how you can actually get this, because what we want to start doing is, as you can see, we've got tiles here, like this little tile here. I can probably zoom in a bit to show you a bit better. So this tile up here is a corner tile, so we'd like to be able to draw out a level using these certain tiles. So how do we actually do that? Well, I'll get into that in a second, but I'll firstly run you through some things that you need to do in order to get this working in our game. So at the moment, Unity just thinks, oh, this is a picture. This is just a texture that you're going to put onto a character or something. So we need to tell Unity that, no, this isn't a texture. We're not going to put it on a model. We're not going to put it on a plane or something like that. We need to tell Unity that actually this is going to be a 2D object. We're going to use parts of this image as a sprite. So how do we do that? Well, what you do is you click on the asset in the project window. So click on this, and it will show in the inspector import settings. So as you can see, it says import settings here, and this is basically just telling Unity what kind of thing this is. So for example, you can have a 3D texture, you can have a cube map, you can have a 2D array. We're going to stick with 2D. And there's different texture types you can have. So you can have a normal map, if you know what that is. We can have light cookies, we can have light maps, shadow maps. There's all kinds of different stuff. But the one that you're probably looking at and thinking, oh, right, that's probably what we need, is Sprite. So if we click on Sprite, Unity will now treat this texture as a sprite. Okay, so we could actually use this as a sprite in our level. So if I click apply, now the problem is that this is a sprite. So if I drag this into the environment, as you can see,
it got all of the tiles.
Yeah. Well, there's our level. Sorted.
That's it. Goodbye.
That's the game. So as you can see, this entire thing is being treated as a sprite, and that's obviously wrong. We need to chop this up into small, into actual tiles, because that's what we're going to use. So how do we actually do that? Well, if you looked carefully whilst I was doing that, you might notice that there's a sprite mode here, and it's called single. Right now, we can have multiple or polygon. To be honest, I don't really know what polygon is, but it's been there for ages.
It's always there.
But there's multiple as well. And what that's saying is that actually inside this sprite is multiple sprites. It's not just one thing. It's not just a character, for example. It's actually multiple sprites, and that's the one we need to choose, because there are multiple sprites in this texture. So whenever you see a texture that has multiple things in it, it's called a sprite atlas. And a question you might think is, why are we doing this? Why can't we just use why can't we just split all of them out into separate images? Why are we putting them all into one image and then chopping them out? Why are we doing that? Well, basically, the reason is efficiency. We have less draw calls if we use sprite atlases, texture atlases, and there are some efficiency there's some benefits to the efficiency of the program, basically. That's the reason. And also sometimes it's just more convenient to have all the things in one texture. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to quickly turn this pixels per unit to 32. Now, pixels per unit, as it says here, is how many pixels in the sprite correspond to 1 unit in the world. And oftentimes as well, if you ever get confused by one of these things, like what does extrude edges mean, you can hover over it and it will give you a nice description, like, oh, how much empty area to leave around the sprite in the generated mesh, for example. So if you ever get stuck with oh, what's this thing called wrap mode? Well, it doesn't give us any information about that, unfortunately. But texture type, what will this texture be used for? So you can get some good information just by hovering over these things. So pixel per unit is how many pixels in the sprite correspond to 1 unit in the world. We need to put 32 because this texture just so happens to be a 32 by 32 pixels per unit texture. So we're just going to put that on 32. I'm going to click apply, and the most important part is here. So we're going to click on the Sprite Editor. So if I click on the Sprite Editor, I think a warning is going to pop up. So you might think, okay, why am I trying to click the Sprite Editor? The Sprite Editor will allow us to, Beth says wrap mode betrayed us. It did.
Not
it did,
wrap
Beth.
mode.
It did. It betrayed us. So the reason I was clicking Sprite Editor is because the Sprite Editor will allow us to open up this texture and slice it into smaller tiles, which is what we want to do. We want to turn this thing into something that has multiple sprites. But so if I click this, the Sprite Editor pops up. I think it's not in there by default. If I go to Package Manager, these packages are actually installed on this. But if you click this Sprite Editor and a warning pops up and it says, "Oh, I can't find the Sprite Editor," then basically what you need to do is go to Window, then go to Package Manager, and you'll be presented with, well, the Package Manager. And you might think, okay, what is the Package Manager? Well, Unity doesn't just give you the editor; they actually give you a whole range of tools that you can use to make your game. So I'm going to just to give you an example of how this works, I'm just going to uninstall these packages just so you know we're on the same sheet. So I'm going to
on the same page, just to demonstrate what would happen.
Yeah, exactly. So the package manager is a really useful tool because there are tons of things in your game that you might want access to. For example, 2D animation. You can install that. There's a bunch of other things there that I'll show you, but I'm just going to quickly uninstall these things, and it's a bit counterintuitive because I'm removing all of these, and I'll just be installing them again in a second. But I want to make sure that if you come across this and a warning pops up, that you know what to do. So I'm just going to quickly do that, and I think it's the Sprite package as well that I need to uninstall as well. But it does take a while to uninstall these things and reinstall them. So hopefully it goes by fast. Oh,
you've now tempted fate there, Ben.
Yeah.
Just not gonna go well.
It'll be fine. So if I click on this now, and I click on Sprite Editor, okay, well, we've still got the Sprite Editor, so that's a bit interesting. If I go back to Package Manager, I think, I'm not sure which one it is, but basically if you get a warning, I'll show you what to do here. So if you see up here, there's packages in project. If you click here and click Unity registry, so these are all the packages that Unity give you with with Unity. So there's all kinds of different stuff. For example, if you want to build games for WebGL, there's a package for that. If you want to, for example, do some post-processing, there's a package for that. There's all kinds of different stuff. If you want to do face tracking, right, you just click here and you can install the package to do that for you. So it's a really useful thing, but the one you probably need, the ones you need for this project are 2D Pixel Perfect, which will allow us to get that retro style kind of aesthetic. So we'll need this. You'll need this 2D Sprite as well for the 2D editor. So we're just going to install these, and it might take a while, but I just wanted to make sure that when you come to actually start on this project and start editing sprites and stuff, that a lot of this stuff is already here and you can install it.
Would you say like packages are kind of like add-ons to the game, add-ons to Unity, basically?
Yeah,
so they're just extra features that Unity offers.
Yeah, exactly. If you have, there's basically a bunch of different features that Unity has made, but if you installed all of these into your game would be huge. If it was a very small game like you were making Pong and you had all of these installed, the game would be massive. So the reason the package manager exists is so you can go, oh, actually I need to do some burst compiling or something. But the ones we're going to use are the 2D Pixel Perfect package, the 2D Sprite package. Right, so this allows you to use the Unity Sprite Editor window. So if you click on the Unity Sprite Editor window and you get an error, do this process where you install
this is where you
package.
Need to go.
Yeah. The other one we're going to look at is the 2D Tile Map Editor, to allow us to actually build levels. But there are other ones here, and I'd invite you to check them out, especially Cinemachine. Cinemachine is a great package. I absolutely love it. But there's tons of other things as well. For example, if you want to do multiplayer and stuff like that. But we've now got the packages that we need. We've got Pixel Perfect. We've got the 2D tile map editor, and we've got the 2D sprite package as well. I think we do. I'll just very quickly check that we do before we start. Yes, we do. Okay. Right. So that's all sorted, and I've talked about packages and stuff. So let's also another thing you need to change with these things is the filter mode. So by default, Unity will try smooth out the textures, and we don't want that. We want them to actually just be pixelated. So we put point no filter, and we click apply. And finally, we can click open our sprite editor. So how do we actually chop this into tiles? Well, it's fairly straightforward. There is a button up here called slice, and there's different types of ways of slicing. So you can actually tell Unity to figure out what is best. You can give how many sprites there are in a row, but the one way we're going to use is grid by cell size. So we know for a fact that this is a bunch of 32 by 32 tiles. So if I put in 32 by 32, and the reason I know that, by the way, is the name of this file is called terrain 32 by 32. So each tile in this thing is 32 pixels by 32 pixels. And then all I do is I just click slice. And as you can see, we've now got something that has chopped each of these into separate sprites. We've got separate tiles, right? Which is great. That's exactly what we need. So we just click apply up here. Make sure you click apply up here. And now you might have seen that this has a little arrow next to it. And we actually have each one of these sprites chopped into chopped into the tiles that we need, which is great, right? So now we finally have something that we can use. So with that in mind, we've chopped all the sprites out of here. So we've said there's multiple tiles in here, and as you can see, there's loads of them here. We need to now build the level from these tiles. So how do we do that? Well, we've been talking about this tile map editor, so I'm going to show you how to use that. You go here to window, and I can never find where it is. I think is it 2D? Yeah, 2D and tile palette. Right, and this will open up this window here. Now this window as well. So what you need to do is click on create new palette. So we need to create a new. It's called a tile palette. It's just a fancy term for what's in that texture, right? But it'll make more sense when we start doing it. So I'm going to click here. I'll call it. Give it a name like I don't know. I'm not going to use tile map because that's a bit confusing. maybe level tiles. I don't know. That's a terrible name, but we've created a new tile palette. So I click create, and then we need to choose where this palette's going to go. So I'm going to make a new folder in the assets thing. You can use whatever folder you like. I'm going to call this tile maps, right? And then I'm going to put it in this folder. Okay, so we now have a tile palette that we can use, right? But there's nothing in there. So what we need to do is click and drag this thing we've just chopped up into loads of little tiles. We can click and drag that into here. And as you can see, it allows us to place them somewhere. So just place it anywhere, and it will ask you again where to put the tiles. Again, choose anywhere. I'm going to put it in the tile maps folder just to keep everything organized. And as you can see, it's doing something. But finally, after this process, now we have tiles that we can select. And this might be like, oh, okay, well, that's exactly what we had before. But more importantly, I'm just going to put this over here into this window here. What we can do is we can start actually painting these tiles on. So if we go to game object and 2D object and go to tile map, and we click on rectangular. So as you can see, we've got 2D object, tile map, rectangular. So now we've got a tile map, right? And I'll call this, tile map. But as you can see, now I can start placing stuff in a level. So for example, I could put a corner here. I could click on this one here. And now I'm painting, a little level that we could use, for example. And, I could have a little thing here. And it's not the best level. I'm not a level designer, but we could make something that looks like a little level, and that's how easy it is. You click on the tile that you want to use, and that's it really. So it's pretty straightforward, and the reason it's called a tile map is well, because it's just a map of tiles. We call these tiles because they fit into a grid. It's like the tiles on a kitchen floor, So we can paint these by clicking on a tile that we want to use. So I'm clicking on these tiles, and then you just click and drag in here. So there are some other things you can do. For example, there is the erase. So if you want to erase this, for example, you can click on the erase tool up here, and you can start removing these tiles. So yeah, we can build a nice little level this way, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to make the entire level here, and there'll magically be a level next time. But I invite you to get this working and paint like a little level. Make a little level that you're happy with.
It's quite a fun and easy process to just do. It is very much like coloring it. Basically.
It is. It very much is like coloring in. It's surprising how addictive this stuff is. I sit here.
Honestly, I have spent hours just designing levels, and it's just you get carried away. I know. I mean, I get carried away. But that just might be me.
Yeah, I get it. The other thing you can do as well is, so there are other tools here which are quite useful. So, for example, flood fill is a lifesaver. So for example, that's horrible.
Maybe the wrong time.
But if I make a little thing here and I want to fill all of this in with a particular tile, let's say this tile, I could paint it all in, but there is the flood fill tool here, and it will just do it like that for us. So it's a really useful tool. There's also select. Select's quite useful because what you can do is you can grab stuff and copy it and that kind of stuff. And let me just get back to this tile editor. Yeah, so you can select things and just check out these tools. There's also the eyedropper, so you can, if you want to select a tile here without clicking there, you can do that. So I can click this, and there's also shortcuts for these as well. But yeah, once you've got this working, just make yourself a little level, maybe with some platforms and stuff, and put some of these into the scene. So maybe you could have a window or something. You could select this here and then just paint an entire window. It's not a very good level, but you get the idea. So have a go at that. The hardest part of all of this is just getting those import settings right. If however you miss a detail or something, just go back, because you have the opportunity to rewind here. So just go back and follow the steps bit by bit. But essentially, that's all you need to do is you just import a texture, right? Like this one. You need to set it to a sprite, make sure it's on multiple, because it has multiple sprites in it. Make sure you've got the Sprite Editor package and the 2D Pixel Perfect package and all the ones that I mentioned. And you should be good. Just make sure to slice it, make a tile map, and then you're sorted. It's a lot of steps just to get to the point where you actually
start creating and building.
Yeah. I mean, you could do it the other way, where you actually build the sprites yourself and put them in level, but a tile map just works so well for 2D games, and it's such a great tool. It's unfortunate it just takes a while to actually get to the point where you can actually do stuff. One last thing before I get on to the next bit is I just want to, well, we've talked a lot about these tools. We talked about what the eraser is, how we can paint and stuff. The thing I want to talk about next is the Pixel Perfect camera. So I've been talking about this Pixel Perfect camera thing. So how do you add that to your game, right? And you might think, okay, well, what is this Pixel Perfect thing? Because you've been talking about it quite a lot, and I'm really confused. Well, as I said, it basically allows you to have that kind of retro aesthetic, but more importantly, when you rotate objects in the scene, they are pixelated to the actual screen rather than the pixels of the texture moving around. But basically, we're going to use it just so the game looks better. So how do you do that? So all you do is click on the main camera. So click on the camera. This button down here, add component. We just click on that. And I've already typed in pixel here, but you'd just type in pixel and you'd see it has pixel perfect camera. So we just click on that. And now this camera has a pixel perfect camera. We can try change all of these round. So for example, it will give you some information of what these mean. Assets pixels per unit. Well, we know that's 32. And we can turn this resolution up. Just try play around with these things. But we're going to use 32. If I click play, it's not much of a game at all. But you can see we've got something that looks quite retro, right? And I haven't built the full level here. But yeah, that's the idea. As Chris said, by the way, in the chat, palette, the word palette, the reason it's called a tile palette, and I should have mentioned this, is that we paint with the palette, right? It's like an artist's palette, with different
coloring
colors.
in, as I said.
Yeah. So it's
probably want to be a bit more like adultish. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna paint our game, but now I'm like coloring in. It's coloring in your game.
So the reason it takes quite a long time to go from a single sprite texture with loads of little sprites in there to actually putting them in level as tiles is because we need to basically give Unity a palette and say, okay, here are the textures that I want to paint in the scene, and the way you do that is with this tile palette. But yeah, that's where the word palette comes from. Chris is entirely right. You are really quite literally painting these tiles onto the 2D level. So yeah, that's basically it. And I think I'm not sure if we have much else to cover really. I think today I really just wanted to show you how to start interacting with Unity. I wanted to mention the package manager for sure, because that's such a good tool. I know we kind of briefly mentioned it, but it's really useful if you want to make a game with something that's quite complicated and you're like, oh, I wonder how you do that. Usually it's in the package manager. Just have a look through the package manager. There's all different kinds of stuff in there. And then finally looking at sprites and import settings and how we can actually get stuff like painting onto the screen. But yeah, once you get to this point, the fun begins, right? You can start building a level.
The world is your oyster, as they say.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's pretty much covers most of the stuff we're looking at today. I think so.
So thank you everyone for coming to the second session of the Ben and Danni show. Ben, would you give us a brief overview of what we're going to be doing next week?
Yeah, sure. So obviously this week we've looked mainly at we've looked a bit more in detail in the Unity editor. We've looked at how to paint tiles and stuff. Next time we're going to look at placing some items in the scene. So actually working with sprite objects. We're going to have a look at prefabs. Now prefabs, that word probably doesn't mean anything, but we're going to have a look at these things called prefabs and why they're useful, and they are really, really useful. So definitely want to talk about prefabs quite a lot. But essentially what we're going to do is we're going to have little collectible coins in the level. Now they won't be collectible as of the next time, but we're going to learn how to put them into the scene, why prefabs are so useful. We're also it's quite daunting. We're going to start scripting as well. So we're going to go quite
getting
gently
into the juicy programming side now.
Yeah. So we're going to get into a little bit of programming. If you know C#, that's quite good. If you don't have any or little programming experience, it should be okay. We're going to be talking about stuff very kind of gently, so it should be fine. But we're going to learn about scripting. We're going to learn about the start method, for example, the update method. We're going to have a look at public variables and how you can edit these public variables in the inspector. And finally, we're going to probably have a look at a bit more in detail on components. But yeah, that's pretty much next time. We're going to have a look at making some collectible coins.
Sounds. I'm very much looking forward to it. So our next session will be on Tuesday, and we hope to see you all there. Hope you have a good day. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.